This edition of Mac Voices is brought to you by SameBox, the best way to take control of your out-of-control email. For a free trial and a $10 credit, visit samebox.com/MacVoices. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the Talk of the Mac community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, I'm happy to welcome back an old friend, Todd Salkovitz. We've had him on before talking about different things. This time, however, he's got a new iOS app that is different than pretty much anything out there, and he can tell you the story. The app is TicketBlast. Todd, it's great to have you back. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Chuck. Good seeing you again. Even in all this snow, you still look young as ever.
Okay, the check's in the mail, Todd. Todd, when I got the press release on TicketBlast, I was really kind of intrigued for a lot of reasons. First of all, we're all trying to go paperless. Second, this kind of fits in with a quantified lifestyle from a little different angle. It's not a Fitbit kind of thing. So there was that. And third, on a personal level, I don't tend not to be one of those guys that keeps mementos around or collects souvenirs, from everywhere. But for some reason, I have retained a lot of ticket stubs to concerts I've been to. I have a shoebox like most people do, and that's kind of where TicketBlast fits in. So tell us what it is and where it came from.
So yeah, that's kind of where it started. I have a shoebox. Here it is. It's my wife's shoes, and I've been throwing tickets in there for years, and I'm talking years. And I just sat on my back deck one year after I turned 50, and I was like, I'd like to do something with these. I've been putting stuff in there for years. So I sat down, and being the accountant, because I do accounting software in my day job, I thought, there's a spreadsheet here. So I little by little, over the course of a couple of months, just put all these ticket stubs into a spreadsheet. And I thought, this is really cool. I can look back and see concerts from the 80s and hockey games and, football games and say, I kind of remember little instances of what happened at each one of those. And after I got it into a spreadsheet, I was like, that'd be cool if I could let my friends look at it. Maybe they could add into it and collaborate on it. So I had a hard time finding a way to put that spreadsheet out there. And then I realized in the end, I'd rather just have it on one of my phones, on my iPhone or my iPad. So I figured there's got to be an app for that. So I went to the App Store. I looked up ticket stubs, and I couldn't find anything besides StubHub. And I really did a lot of searching, figuring, like everything else in every other category, somebody must have done this. I can't be the first one to think of this. And in this instance, I was. So after I realized that this thing just didn't exist, I thought this could be my contribution to the world. I could actually take my ticket stubs, take my crazy spreadsheet and my obsession with saving things like that and put them in the way app. So I'm a product manager by day working on, like I said, accounting software. So I took my product management skill, if you were, and I actually sat down on my whiteboard in my office and decided, if I wanted to create an app that actually tracked all these, what would it look like? So I started mapping out different screens like I would for our desktop and iOS software. And I came up with what I thought would be a kind of a cool app. So I went looking around for a developer because I'm not a developer. I'm a sales and marketing guy. I'm a product manager. So I'm good at coming up with requirements. But my last programming job, was years ago. I learned Fortran in college, which nobody knows what that is. But I went to a school called Drexel that required you to own a Mac the year after the Super Bowl ad. So now you know how old I am. So after I realized that, nobody did this, and it was like my calling to create this app, I ended up contracting with a developer company that we use, during my day job to do our own software. And I said, look, this isn't a profit project. This is a passion project. I have no illusion that this is going to make me rich. This isn't Angry Birds. I just want to create something that's mine that I would find useful. And we sat down and we went through my spreadsheet and we realized that I had way more data than they really thought would be useful. So the development company that I worked with did a great job in sort of fine-tuning what I thought I needed and taking the requirements and paring them down to like a reasonable, few simple things, because they were very adamant about an app is great when it's simple. So we created TicketBlast, and it works on an iPhone, and the sum of it all is it helps you relive the best live moments of your life, whether they be concerts or movies or shows or games, because everybody's got these ticket stubs, and even though a lot of that stuff is going digital, old guys like me still have these shoe boxes of ticket stubs. They're just impossible to throw away. And as I started going through and taking pictures of each one on my phone, you start to remember things that you did when you went to these concerts, whether was losing a tire going to see the Dead in Washington, D.C., 18 years ago. Or was, where you went out to eat, or, the day I caught a hockey puck at a Flyers game. So these little things, you start to think, what you really got left at the end of the day is your memories. So really the goal of this app isn't so much Ticket Stub as it is a way to just relive memories. I thought that was pretty cool, and, maybe it's just me. I thought this would be a great app, and I figured I'd start with Ticket Stubs, and, maybe one day it leads me somewhere else. So that's the short of it all.
Todd, we'll get you to demo a little bit of TicketBlast. Excuse me, you got me with StubHub with TicketBlast in a second. But is this something where you take a photo of the tickets, or you enter the data in a la spreadsheet, the way you were describing before?
Yes, and kind of. Yes, you take a picture of your actual stub, and I'll show you that in a second. But also, you wouldn't import it from a spreadsheet. So my development company said, you've got this great spreadsheet, but you're the only crazy guy in the world who would sit down and put their ticket stubs on the spreadsheet. So because there's only a few data fields for each type of event, you basically take the picture, and then when you go into TicketBlast, you create a stub, you add the picture, you capture the date, and based on the type of event, it'll determine if it's a game, there's a home team and an away team. If it's a concert, there's a band. If it's a show, there's a theater or a venue. So again, it's really only a handful of fields, and it gives you a really cool way to kind of flip through them, what I call the cover flow view, but don't tell Apple I use that word. And it's just a really cool way to be able to look through your ticket stubs in date order and see where you were and what you were doing. And on the back end of it, after you save the stub, you can then share it on Facebook and Twitter. So it's a really cool way to take what you've got and let your friends and contacts see what you're up to.
So I love the idea of the memories. Is there a way to say for something more current? Because now a lot of places have gotten away from paper tickets. They send these electronic tickets. Have you integrated any way for me to say, okay, here's a new ticket that it came in email and I want to add it to my TicketBlast collection? Yeah,
it would really be the same process in the sense that the ticket you've got on your phone, you could just take a picture of it because it's really just an image. So you would just take the image of the actual screenshot of the ticket stub, which is now electronic versus on paper or whatever it is, and kind of go through the same process and do the same thing.
Okay. And how about the social aspect? Because you know that everybody wants to share everything these days. Or do you have the capacity to, say, post a picture of a ticket to Facebook or Twitter or whatever?
That's exactly right. So after you save the stub, there's a way at the end of the process to share it. And then as long as you're connected to both of those or either of those, you could tweet it or put it on your Facebook page. And, basically it'll take the image of the picture and let you put in additional notes. So you can keep notes in the app that you may not want to share publicly. So when you go to post those things publicly, you can put a different message with the app on Facebook or Twitter.
Old girlfriends' names and that kind of thing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I don't want my app causing a divorce. That wouldn't be good for my rating.
It wouldn't be good for anything, no. Well, show us a little bit of it. I think this is just a very cool idea.
Okay, let me get my screen here, so if you give me a second here. So basically what you're looking at now is the cover flow view. So this allows me to go through and just kind of cycle through the tickets that I've got in here. So I'm doing it in landscape mode so you can kind of see more of what's going on. So if I click on the plus button on the bottom right here, you'll see the place where I actually add a new ticket, and it says tap to add a photo. So I'll do that, and I can either take a photo or choose an existing photo. So because I'm doing this on the iPhone simulator, I'm going to grab a picture I've already got. So here's a picture of a stub. I can resize it. I can just flip it around, whatever I need to do. And if I click on Use Original, it actually shows you the ticket stub right there in the window. And when I click on the event type field, I can decide what type of event it actually is. I can override those things. And depending on the field that I select, as I said earlier, there'll be different fields here. So I can come in now and type in whatever it is as far as the venue, as far as the headliner, and then come in and just kind of go through the fields, put in my dates. I can put in additional notes. And then when I'm done, I click the save button, and now I've got a new ticket stub. And if I want to go back into the ticket stub, I'll just click on it again. And at the bottom of the screen, I'll click the share button, and that's where I would share it out to Facebook or Twitter. And basically, you would send the picture itself out to Facebook or Twitter, and then you can put an additional note in. So again, it's all really about simple data entry, fast. I looked at these because the accountant in me sees transactions. Each one of these being a stub or a transaction. So it's all about quick data entry. But then if I choose to, I can also go back into it and edit it, add additional notes. But really the nuts and bolts of it are just being able to go through the cover flow view, whether in landscape or portrait, and then capture that and just really kind of make a collection. So it's really all about taking your collection from the shoebox and putting it onto your iPhone.
I love this. It's simple, and I really applaud the fact that you have not tried to indulge your accountant tendencies too much and take every single little piece of data that you can possibly get from this event that you can remember. You're just trying to hit the high points, and if you want to add that data, then you do it in a free-form field.
Yeah, and when I went through the spreadsheet originally, I thought, it would be cool to know what tickets cost. I have concerts that I went to back when I was in high school, literally, that were $6, $7 a piece. And now they're 20, 30 times that. So I was actually capturing promoters and, venues and seat and row and, all kinds of crazy data because like a ticket stub is a source document. There's lots of data on there. And, my development team was really adamant about saying, you may want that data someday, but let's start simple. Let's keep it easy. Because if it takes too long to enter a transaction, enter a ticket, then no one's going to want to do it. So we really kind of pared it down to literally a handful of fields, as you just saw. And it's just, who, what, where, when, and why. And that's really the way to do it, because the longer it takes to do it, the less likely it is you're going to keep up with it. And again, it's just cool to be able to go to a party and show your friends, hey, I went to see Elvis and the Who at Madison Square Garden for the Kids Fight Cancer tour. That was pretty cool to be able to put that on my app and then Facebook it. And then people who I know who don't live anywhere near me can engage with me on the fact that I went to this concert that they heard about and couldn't get tickets.
This edition of MacVoices is brought to you by SameBox, the best way to take control of your out-of-control email. For a free trial and a $10 credit, visit samebox.com/MacVoices. Everyone's always looking for a better way to do things. And there are always people out there who will try to convince you that theirs is the best way. Sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. When I started looking at SameBox, I liked what I saw. And then I scrolled to the bottom of their website, clicked on that little unobtrusive About link, and suddenly understood why SameBox makes so much sense. We'll talk more about some of SameBox's great features, but for now, you need to understand that some of the rules for their solution to the email problem spell out why SameBox works so well. Rules like, the customer doesn't have to do or learn anything. Because with SameBox, you really don't. Set up SameBox with your email account, a process that will take you about 90 seconds if you only use one finger to type, and SameBox starts performing its magic. Rules like, it has to work everywhere people check their email today. Because any email solution that doesn't work on my iPhone, iPad, and Mac isn't a solution, and it doesn't work for me, or you. Rules like, it has to be as secure as humanly possible. Something that's convenient but isn't secure isn't really convenient at all, because it's going to create more work sooner or later, and none of us need any more work. Those are just a few of the SameBox rules, and with that foundation to work from, it's no wonder that SameBox is such a hit. We'll be looking at more features of SameBox that were part of the basis and some that were added as they went along. Or, don't wait. Go sign up for a 14-day free trial of SameBox and watch your email go from a roaring beast to a purring kitten. At the end of the 14 days, you're going to find that going back to your old way of doing emails is unthinkable. So visit samebox.com/MacVoices and you'll get $10 credit when you sign up for the service at any level. That's a $10 credit at samebox.com/MacVoices. Go get it right now. SameBox, the best way to take control of your out-of-control email. Thanks to SameBox for sponsoring this edition of MacVoices. That's a really great point. I never thought of a ticket stub as a source document. There is a lot of information. But if does it really matter that you were in seat 145C? If you really want to know that, if you find out that a friend went to the same concert, okay, well then you pull up the stub and you're looking at the picture.
That's right.
You never lose the data. You just don't have the ability to find it right away.
And there's been some cool web articles I've seen recently where people have actually redesigned the whole concept of a ticket stub like the printed stub. So it's really getting away from the old style, long ticket, Ticketron or Ticketmaster or whatever. So it's almost becoming a dying art, the actual ticket stub. But, what I found interesting was when I opened some of them up and out of my shoebox, I couldn't read them because they were clearly folded up, thrown into my back pocket, stains on them from God knows what, foot marks from when you dropped it and then picked it up. It's just crazy stuff like that. But also it's, what I found also amazing is a lot of the places I've been to just don't exist anymore. Again, being a Philly guy, places like the Spectrum doesn't exist anymore. It's a parking lot. Or places like Veterans Stadium that you probably heard of. So venues like that just don't exist anymore. And I've heard from people who've had the same experience, from being out west and going to some of the old classic concert venues like the Fillmores that just don't exist anymore. And the other thing I heard that was interesting from a couple of people was they liked the idea of the app, but they wanted me to develop it for other things. I found people who, collect wine. So it's really the same process for wine. One guy wanted me to redevelop the app and actually offered me money to do it for concert posters. He's a classic concert poster collector. So that was pretty cool. One of the other things I collect, which is completely crazy, is salt and pepper shakers. I've done a lot of travel in my day job, and I've sat around a lot of airports, like a lot of people. And it started off by being in Australia a bunch of years ago, being stuck in the airport with money that I'll never be able to use again. So I went to the gift store and I bought myself crazy salt and pepper shakers. In fact, going to Macworld, that was my first pair from Macworld, buying some San Francisco Alcatraz salt and pepper shakers, and I dropped Mr. Salt, and I had to go back to Macworld to get Mr. Salt. And I thought, wow, there's a collection, and there's actually, as crazy as I am, there are people who collect and sell and trade salt and pepper shakers. So, so I took this and said, maybe I'm not the only crazy one out there, but ticket stubs is something I've always been interested in because, again, it helps me remember things that I've done that I would never have ordinarily remembered. And, it's been kind of a fun trip. Like I said, when you get older, you get right down to it. All you got left is your memories. And these ticket stubs, every single one of them reminds me of something, whether it was a birthday or something spectacular happened. And, every one of them is a little bit different. And I have a lot of duplicates, having been to a lot of the same concerts or a lot of the same sporting events here in the Philly area, but this is a Philly and a music town, so having a ticket stub app is pretty cool.
Yeah, and that's also another interesting way to take it, that you could maybe redesign this with a couple tweaks for a lot of different kinds of collections.
That's right.
And again, the idea of because we all know collectors, no matter what you collect, there's this terrible compulsion to gather every piece of information up you can get about it. And I love the idea, again, of the source document, that you take a picture of it. Maybe you don't need to gather up all these nitty-gritty details. They're there if you need to find them, but you don't have to gather them if you don't want to.
That's right. And again, it's all about sharing them with your friends and family, whether you post them on the social media or not. But as I walk around and have these ticket stubs on my phone, if we're in a conversation or in a meeting and someone says they saw Rocky Horror Picture Show, I could be, I just saw that last year at the Bucks County Playhouse. Here's my ticket stub. So it's not changing the world, but it changed me. That's what's important. I also, Chuck, I also mentioned to you earlier that, my son was in between college and high school. And I also looked at this investment in doing this as a way for us to work together on this project. Because, like having an app is like having a small business. And even though you don't expect to get rich, you've got costs and you've got investments. Again, the accountant and me thinking that this is a business. And, so I also looked at it as a learning opportunity for him to see what it takes to get an idea, put it on a whiteboard, work with a development company, work through the user interface, going from wireframes to graphic design, and then do beta testing and actually sit down and put in hundreds and hundreds of stubs and try to break the app to the extent that, you'd found every bug, and then eventually putting it up on the App Store and, showing up one day and there it is live on the App Store. So, I looked at it as a learning experience, not only for him, but not only for me, but for my son. And to this day, he still does, being away at college, he does all the social media stuff, managing a TicketBlast website and the app or the Facebook and Twitter accounts. And again, not a lot of activity there, but it's enough to say we're participating. So it's fun.
And I'm glad you brought it up because I was going to drag it out of you anyway. I just really applaud you for that. I think that is such a cool thing. I love it when you get the kids involved, not just because they're involved, but also they bring a different eye to this stuff. And so, if I accept the premise, which I'm not sure I do, that you're an old guy, it brings that youthful image into it. This is their world. Right. And so, they've got ideas, and they're good ideas. They're more relevant to them than they are to us.
Yeah, because really, like I said, my first Mac was a Fat Mac, and probably a 30-year audience has never heard of that. But, his first Mac was an iPhone, which is 50 times more powerful than my Fat Mac was back in my Drexel days. So the fact that, they're starting from a place that it took me 50 years to get to is amazing. So, yeah, having that perspective, and even my wife and daughter were doing a lot of the, beta testing, reading copy for the website. And, it did become kind of a family affair because, I can write, but you don't want me editing stuff on the web. You just want me to come up with the content. And so my wife does all the editing, and my daughter, who's a little bit younger, can look at it and tell me what's cool and what's not. So, we picked colors. It was all about orange. I got the orange hair. I'm a hockey fan in Philadelphia, so it's all about the Flyers. So, when a designer said, well, what websites do you like and what colors? It was fun. It was fun to be able to look at a bunch of websites and say, I like that one, I like that one, I don't like this one. Before you know it, I've got my own. So seeing that process, play out was great. And again, my development company that had the user interface designers, the graphics folks, and all the coders and testers, they were fabulous to work with. I'd recommend them. A company called SourceBits, they were great. So again, it was a really cool project. And again, it's not the end of the world with what we're doing here. It's all about having some fun. And like I said, I couldn't find an app to do it, so I took it as my calling and my responsibility to bring this thing to market. So, it's kind of a cool little app, and hopefully one day it'll expand out like you were talking. Like I said, it's a passion project, and that's what it's all about.
Yep. Passion is the best way, the best motivation for anything.
It is no ordinary word, as they say. That's for sure.
Yeah, that's well said. How much, Todd?
It's $2.99, so it's not going to break the bank. And it's funny. There's a lot of articles online you've no doubt seen about pricing on the App Store, and the prices are just so deflated. And I didn't want to give it away because I wanted people to have some skin in the game, which is something we at work and my day job are real into. If you give it away, it's a little bit harder to really get people motivated. So you're sitting here trying to determine is $4.99 too much? Which is kind of crazy to a guy like me. And we do accounting software at my day job that costs a lot more than $4.99, and it does some really powerful stuff. So, we play with different prices. We started out at $3.99, and we put version 2 out to work with iOS 7. We figured we would drop it a little bit because that's what's cool about the App Store. You can modify your approach. You're not really ever stuck. And so right now it's $2.99. Still a great deal. Great deal at twice the price.
Well, it is a great deal. I mean, it's enough to make it interesting.
Yes.
But obviously you have costs to offset that. That's just reality. But I'm sitting here thinking about just the process of putting the ticket stubs in. This could be something that would be a whole lot of fun for people to sit down and, even if it's one night, they take pictures of all the stubs and then start to fill in the data. But it could be something they do with husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever, even the kids, although the kids would probably be bored if you go back too far. But,
they wouldn't know who any of the bands were.
That's there is that little problem.
The B-52s? What's that?
Okay, so let's wrap up with one important question. What is your most valued, your most prized ticket stub?
It's funny, I just mentioned the B-52s. I saw them the day Ronald Reagan got elected. I don't know why that matters, but it was November 19, whatever it was. Maybe the last time I saw the entire Grateful Dead with Jerry Garcia live, that would be one. And one that you can't see, but it's hanging on my wall behind me, is when I caught a hockey puck at a Pittsburgh Penguins Flyers game. Of all the hockey games I've been to, I've never caught a puck or a baseball or anything. So the one where I caught a puck, and if you look closely at the ticket app icon, the stub on the icon has a ticket location, and it's that ticket stub. So I guess I'd have to say that one. The day I caught a puck, and the funny part about that is I was sitting second row, first time ever for that as well. This puck lands at my feet, and I turn around, and there's this 7-year-old kid behind me, and his mother gives me this look, a look that said, you should give that puck to my son. And I'm thinking in my head, I've been coming to games for years. I can't be a total heel and not give the kid the puck. But then I thought, I can be a total heel. I'm going to keep this puck. This kid has a lifetime of hockey games to go to. I can buy him a puck. Yeah. This one's fine. So we beat that Pittsburgh Flyers game probably 15 years ago, and that puck hangs on my wall. So that's the one.
That's cool. That's good. I think I think that's going to be something that everybody that goes through this, not only are they going to relive a lot of great moments, but they're going to be those one or two tickets that just, these are kind of prized possessions because of the memories and the experience. So
that's right.
Very nice. Very nice. Todd, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Very cool idea.
Thanks very much.
Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. You can follow me on Twitter. You can find everything there is to find out about Todd and about TicketBlast by visiting our show notes and, of course, picking it up in the App Store, and I'll have links to that as well. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, app.net, Google+, Facebook, and LinkedIn. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the MacVoices Dispatch, to stay up to date with all the latest MacVoices news from our front page or at MacVoices.com/newsletter. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at BackbeatMedia.com.